Never meant to be. My Little Pony Fanfic by Priceless 911. Chapter 3, I am conflicted. The peaceful sound of the trees rustling in the wind was the only thing she could hear as Zekora balanced upside down on an unsupported staff, suspending her a few feet over a shallow pond. As she kept her balance, Zekora tried to clear her mind and slip into a deep meditative state. However, it wasn't even a full minute before her thoughts became clouded with concern. Her balance broke, and she fell from the staff into the water below. With the water being less than 2 feet deep, Zekora stood up and rubbed her head as she looked into the water just as the settling ripples revealed her reflection. She shook her head in disappointment. She knew what had really broken her concentration, and it went far beyond something as simple as balance. What was preventing her from clearing her thoughts was the idea that within the next 24 hours the one zebra she had seen since leaving home was about to leave. Trying to push the worry away, Zekora trotted out of the shallow water and onto the shore, rubbing her head in irritation. She had always known his visit was temporary, and she knew that as soon as his strength returned he would leave, but even so she couldn't help feeling distressed at the thought of never seeing him again. Disturbed by the idea, Zekora decided to give up on meditating for the day. She left the staff floating in the pond and trotted back to her home. Back at Zekora's tree, Zeil sat on the bed and began removing the bandages from his hoof from the Timberwolf attack the night before. Though it had only been 12 hours, the wound on his hoof was already healed, leaving small bald spots where each Timberwolf tooth had broken the skin. Zeil knew that if this healed like the rest, fur would grow back within the day and leave no scars, just like the many cuts that now seemed non-existent. All but the stitching on his back, which still wasn't completely gone but did resemble a closed, healing wound. After one last look at his hoof, he shimmed to the edge of the bed, climbed out and stood straight with no soreness or need of assistance. Feeling his strength fully returned, Zeil took a few steps around the room to be sure. He trotted with exaggerated steps, jumped and shifted his stance to test his muscles. With each action, he felt no hint of the pain that had plagued him for days. Only one conclusion remained: it was time to go. Still, he trotted to the mirror and examined every inch of his zebra-disguised body for any sign of injury, even though he knew he was stalling his departure. He sighed in disappointment. Looks like I'm completely fine, I guess. A deep, troubling thought came over him. He sat in front of the mirror and replayed the sight from last night: Zekora standing on the cliff, the lone firefly circling her, the soft light cascading up from below. He thought of the peace that had radiated from her and the peace he had felt at the same time. He tried to recall the emotions and mumbled, "It wasn't her feelings, it was mine, and it felt like low." The door opened. Zekora trotted in with an unhappy expression on her damp face. Trying to hide his thoughts, Zeil blushed slightly. "Oh, good morning. Are you all right, Zekora? You look a little wet." Zekora rubbed the back of her head in embarrassment. "Yes, quite an accident, it would seem. The rocks were slick crossing the stream." Zeil smiled and handed her a towel. "Well, not all mornings go flawless." She dried herself and hesitated. Your bite mark, it seems healed, from what I can see. It shouldn't interfere much with your journey. When she mentioned his bite, Zeil rubbed the area and said, "Oh, yeah. It wasn't as bad as the soreness, so I wasn't worried. Although the stitches on my back are still healing." Zechariah approached for a closer look. "Come to me, let me see." He watched as she inspected the healing wound on his back. Up close, she could tell it was healing, but much slower than his other injuries. She nodded and began to look at his face. "The wound is fine, from as much as I can tell." Their eyes met. For a split second they froze until Zeil realized and looked away, blushing and clearing his throat. "So, it's still healing?" Zechariah, also blushing, looked away to break the awkwardness. Yes. From what I can tell, it's healing very slowly but quite well. With a few more days in proper care, the wound will vanish, leaving no scar to bear." Zeil turned toward the bed. "Well, if that's the case, then I should be fine to get ready to leave. I still have places to go." Zechariah offered a polite smile. "Yes, your mark, to find who you are. But I wish to give you something for all your help so far." Curious, Zeil watched as she trotted to her cauldron and picked up a saddlebag beside it. She returned and held it out. "Take this for help, it will assist, you see. Some food and provisions for your journey. Take the main trail and turn right when it splits. That's all you need, it doesn't take much wit." Zeil stared at the saddlebag. He did not know how to react. It was one thing to be healed and sheltered, but to be given provisions he had never known. Such kindness, not even from his queen. He reached for the bag and tried to speak. I don't know what to say, but, thanks." Zechariah smiled as he slung on the saddlebag. "To thank me, there is no need. To help a friend is a most pleasing deed." With pleasant smiles, Zeil and Zechariah trotted side by side to the door. They stopped at the trailhead leading away from her tree. Zeil rubbed the back of his head in embarrassment. "Well, Zechariah, I guess this is goodbye." Zechariah looked away and rubbed the side of her hoof. "I know it is, and I'll say this too. May good fortune smile upon you." Zeil chuckled uneasily. "Good fortune, well, as long as I refrain from flying, I guess I'll always have it." They shared a brief laugh. He raised his hoof and stalled. "Well, Zechariah, He patted her shoulder. "Thanks for everything. If I ever find myself in this area, I'll stop by for a visit." Zechariah sighed, disappointed at his understated farewell, but she smiled. "I can't wait till then. For your friendship, Zein, I will always trust." Zeil nodded, turned toward the trail and trotted away. At the edge of the tree line he paused, turned back, gave a friendly nod and walked into the trees until he vanished from sight. Once he was gone, Zechariah sighed, went back inside and closed the door. Hidden in the tree line, Zeil made his way around Zechariah's house to the bush where his severed wing lay. Looking around to ensure he was alone, he reached under the bush and pulled out the wing. Though dried blood coated it, there was no decomposition. The thin insect-like wing had fallen off with no flesh attached. The transparent membrane that gave the wing its shape was deeply scarred and damaged to a point that would keep him grounded if it were still attached. Discouraged but hopeful, Zeil decided to take it with him. He might find a way to reattach it later. He placed the wing into the saddlebag Zechariah had given him, turned back to the trail and continued out of the Everfree. As he traveled, his mind churned, not about the queen, not about the swarm, not about where he was going, but about what he'd felt with Zechariah the night before, what he should have said, what he should have done when he said goodbye, and why leaving left him disappointed. He mumbled to himself, "Why am I feeling this way? Sure, she had feelings for me. I kinda feel bad for ignoring them, but am I feeling, no, it's impossible." Laughing in denial, he muttered, "To think a changeling like me falling in love, it's ridiculous. I mean, even if I could, why would it be with a zebra of all things?" Lost in denial, Zeil missed the correct fork and took the next turn deeper into the forest. Hours passed before he realized he was utterly lost. He looked at the sky and groaned, "Great, less than an hour till sunset. And I can't find my way out. I couldn't even find my way back to Zechariah's to ask for directions." A lone timberwolf watched him from a safe distance. Zeil smiled smugly and called, "You wanna play again?" At the sound of his voice, the timberwolf turned and vanished. Zeil laughed. "I didn't think so. One I can handle, but if night comes with more timberwolves, I'll become lumberchow. I'd better find shelter, and fast." He quickened his pace, searching desperately for shelter. Mists rolled in with the twilight and obscured the trail. He moved cautiously until the fog thickened around him and he could barely see the ground. "Great, this crap. Again. I gotta be careful. Zechariah isn't here to stop me from trotting off a cliff this time." With each step he tried to ensure he stayed on the trail. When his next hooffall sounded hollow, he paused. Scraping his hoof along the dirt, he discovered a wooden plank beneath. The next step was wood too, and as he looked ahead he realized he stood at the start of a long rope bridge. He tested the rope strength and, finding it sturdy, mumbled, "Well, it's not like I have many options. Here goes nothing." He crossed the bridge with extreme caution. The mist covered both ends and hid how far the drop below might be. Finally, the ground ahead emerged from the fog and he trotted onto a cliff, breathing a sigh of relief. "Whoa, glad that's over with, but where am I?" The mist thinned and a massive shadowy structure took shape, old ruins of an abandoned castle. The emblem on the gate made him mutter, the symbol of the Royal Alicorn sisters, but this isn't Canterlot. I wonder why. Howling timberwolves behind him cut his thought short. Relieved to have found shelter, Zeil pushed open the massive doors and entered the palace corridor. He ventured deeper until he reached the throne room, a ruin nearly demolished by war. Scars of battle marred floor and walls, holes in the ceiling looked blasted open by magical beams, and scorch marks stained the floor. The hall was abandoned, no sign of life anywhere. He passed the throne room into a large lobby and called up the staircase, "Hello. Is anyone there?" Silence answered. He tried again, "I need a place to stay for the night. Is it all right for me to take refuge here?" Still no reply. He shrugged and started up the stairs. Well, I didn't hear any objections. Looks like I found a place to sleep. He searched the castle, a library, an empty kitchen, and finally a tall tower with a large bedroom covered in tarps. He set his saddlebag on a covered table. This should work, dusty, but I've slept in worse. Passing a tall piece of furniture, something caught his eye. He lifted the tarp and stared into his own reflection in a full-length mirror. He realized he'd kept his zebra appearance since leaving Zecharos without thinking. He reverted into his changeling form, green eyes with no irises or pupils, a curved horn, and only one wing. He sighed and turned away. He tested the old bed, the springs creaked, but it seemed usable. Later, on the balcony, moonlight cut through the mist. The fog had cleared, the Everfree lay spread beneath him, similar to the view from Zecharos Cliff. In the distance, a cluster of lights drifted above the tree line, the fireflies. He sat down, smiling as memories of the previous night returned. As the lights danced, he wondered where Zecharos might be. If she stood on the cliff, would fireflies circle her as before? He felt a quiet peace thinking of how the glow made her stripes more visible and the blue of her eyes like a darkened night sky. The smile faded as denial crept back in. What am I doing? Thinking thoughts like this? If the queen or the other changelings saw me, they'd cast me out, call me a traitor. He glanced down at his changeling hoof, then looked again toward the lights and other sights, a clearing with an unusual bluish glow, the poison joke fields, and, closer, the very tree that was Zecharos' home. Zecharos' home. I can see it from here. He tried to shake it off and retreated inside to pace. Why do I feel so bad? What makes me want to go there? I'm going to bed. He crawled into the musty bed but lay awake for nearly 2 hours before finally drifting off. The next morning, sunlight streamed through a hole in the ceiling. Zeil sat up, remembered where he was, and went to the saddlebag on the table. Passing the mirror, he paused. In his sleep he had unconsciously changed into zebra form. He rubbed his head and changed into a changeling again. I must have had a dream or something, it's not like me to sleep change. He rummaged through the saddlebag. Okay, extra bandages, a flask of water, some hay, like I needed, some apples. Well, at least these aren't bad. And, what's this? At the bottom he found a folded slip of paper. The outside read, "For your great and noble journey, wherever it may roam. Keep this close, so you will find your way home." He smiled. Even in writing she rhymes. He unfolded it. A map. She gave me a map to lead me out of the forest. He laughed at the irony. I was lost for hours yesterday, and I had a map. The whole time? That's just my luck. Then he froze. Why had she given him a map? She had drawn it herself. Did she give him her only map, or make a second? Just for him? He studied it closely and realized it showed every trail and landmark of the Everfree, with Zecharos' home marked on it. Is she trying to tell me how to return? He followed the trail on the map from the ruined castle to Zecharos' home. After seeing how to get back, he paced the room. What is wrong with me? Why am I? Sighing, he sat before the mirror and looked at his changeling. Reflection. Fine, fine. I admit it. I enjoyed being around her. I liked her. Company. She was interesting, and I hate to leave when we both would prefer I stay. But, he shifted back into zebra form in the mirror. This isn't who I am. I'm not a zebra, I'm a changeling. I'm a servant to my queen and must do as I'm told. Although, my queen is nowhere to be found, and I'm stuck in this forest. So, he put his hoof to his face, mumbling, "What am I saying? I can't just go back, what reason would I have? It would seem suspicious if I just showed up and asked to stay. It would put me and my race in danger. Even if she likes me, if she knew the truth, she'd cast me aside like the rest of Equestria, unless, looking at his zebra appearance, his eyes brightened. If I have a good reason for staying, something I need but could only get from her, it would make me seem less suspicious, and it would help me, but what?" He studied his flank and smiled. "That's it, that's my alibi." With new resolve, he grabbed the map, studied the trail, tossed it down, and sprinted from the room. He barreled through the lobby, past the throne room, out the castle gate, and across the bridge, sprinting as fast as his hooves would carry him. As he ran, he muttered, "This has to work. I know I shouldn't do this, but I'm sure this will please the queen if I explain how much this could benefit the swarm." He hit every fork with the route burned into his memory and finally stopped at the tree line just outside Zekara's home. Breathing heavily, he stood outside the door, raised his hoof to knock and hesitated. Wait, what if she says no? What if she turns me away? He lowered his hoof and fretted, maybe I rushed here too quickly, or not quickly enough. What if she's forgotten me? He shook his head. No, I'm already here, so I might as well ask. Besides, she isn't that kind of mare. She's too kind-hearted for that, isn't she? He steadied his breathing and readied himself. Just as he drew back to knock, the door opened and Zekara stepped out. She froze, their surprise mirrored on both faces. Feeling awkward, Zeil stammered, "Oh. Hi. I came to, well, I wanted to ask you something, if it's all right?" Blushing, Zekara replied, "Oh. I see. Your return is a little soon, but if you have a question, now is most opportune." Zeil blushed and hurried on. "Well, you see, I still don't have a talent, and I was wondering. Zekara, you're amazing with magic and you achieved this without a horn and everything. What I'm trying to ask is, Zekara, will you teach me how to do magic? You're the only one I know who can, and I think it would be an honor to learn from the best, that is, if you will teach me." Still blushing, Zekara hesitated. "You want to learn magic, and you want me to teach? I can't say I am certain it will be within your reach." Zeil stepped closer, earnest. "Please, Zekara. I'll work as hard as you need me to. I'm sure with you as a teacher I can get my CU placement mark without problems." Zekara considered, then replied, "If you are quite sure, then I'll teach you all I can. Although I hope you excuse me, I have no lesson plan." Relieved, Zeil beamed. "Thank you, Zekara. I promise I'll do everything I can." So from now on, would I call you teacher, or sensei, or something like that? Zekora giggled. No title is needed. Zekora is fine, for that is my name. Just as yours is Zein. He felt like he'd been punched in the gut by joy. Yes. Zein, that's me. All right, just Zein. Although keeping his identity hidden still weighed on him, Zeil felt happy he had a legitimate reason to stay. He knew one day he would have to tell her the truth and wondered how she would react. Back in Canterlot, Princess Luna, Twilight Sparkle, and Shining Armor stood in the castle courtyard as Princess Celestia's carriage flew over the walls and landed nearby. As Celestia stepped down, Luna greeted, "Welcome home, sister. How did your journey fare?" Celestia smiled. Surprisingly, it went as planned. King Talon wishes to lend his full support and increase defense on his borders to prevent any changelings from crossing. Shining Armor asked, "And the relic, your majesty?" Celestia nodded as guards brought out a chest. "I have it here. It's called an Everstone, and as expected it neutralizes the magic changelings use to change their appearance. However, the effects are temporary and the stone must make contact with the target's skin. Also, the stone will affect unicorn magic as well as that of changelings. If you touch the stone, you won't be able to use any spells." Twilight stepped forward. "What about levitation? Could we use a spell to press the stone against a changeling?" Celestia shook her head. "Impossible. The stone absorbs magic from anyone it touches. Any spell used on it would be absorbed as well." Luna asked, "So, how long will the Everstone disable magic?" Celestia replied, "The king said it depends on the changelings' abilities, but their tests concluded it works for at least an hour." The guards laid the chest in front of them and Shining Armor opened it to reveal the odd yellowish stone. 1 hour, That's plenty. Guard, take this to the local blacksmith and have him use it to make weapons. I want spears, swords, arrows, picks and axes. Then gather all Pegasi and Earth Pony. Guards. I want each squad armed with at least one of these weapons, myself included." The guards saluted. "Yes, Your Majesty." "Right away." As the guard carried the chest away, Twilight asked, "But if you carry one, wouldn't your magic be disabled too?" Shining Armor smiled confidently. "Don't worry, sis. I don't need magic to beat something as wimpy as a changeling. Besides, it's you who needs your magic, so as long as you're there to use the transport spell, we shouldn't have problems." Twilight thought a moment. "Well, I guess so." Celestia gave Shining Armor a skeptical look. "I wouldn't judge them so lightly, Prince Armor. Remember, changelings aren't as dim-witted as they seem. Treat each and every one as if they were Queen Chrysalis herself. However, I highly recommend non-lethal force. At this point, I can only assume each is frightened for personal safety. We may be angered by their actions, but we must prove ourselves merciful. I want to avoid fatalities on both sides." Shining Armor nodded and followed the guard. Celestia turned to Twilight. "Twilight, what was the plan your brother mentioned?" Something about transporting the changelings away? Twilight nodded. Yes, Your Majesty. We located where the changelings' kingdom used to be and put together a strategy to transport them back to their original land. Celestia replied, Good. I'll leave that to you. Please don't take offense, but I worry that if I gave that task to your brother, he might transport them to a dangerous place. I worry his feelings will overpower his judgment. Twilight answered, I understand, Your Majesty. But are you sure he would do anything unjust? Celestia nodded. As a soldier, shining armor is trained to hide his anger so he can keep a clear mind when needed. But like all ponies, anger can get the best of him. I trust he will hold back, but he will need support, otherwise it could be more dangerous for him than for those around him.